sake of their well-being. Governor, the President, and I believe you are 100% right in making the decision to get our kids back in the classroom here in South Carolina. But beyond that, it's also right for working families. We think particularly of single mothers and fathers who will bear a disproportionate burden of school closures. It's difficult to go back to work if you've got a dependent child at home. And I heard one statistic on the way here on Air Force Two that there is an estimate that only 21% of single parents can telecommute. And so making it possible for people to return to the workforce, it's right for working families that we reopen our schools as well. So, Governor, I want to commend you for your leadership throughout this pandemic, the way you've put the health and safety of the people of South Carolina first. I want to thank both of your senators and your congressional delegation that have worked with us to provide the support and the resources. I pledge to you that we're going to continue to make sure that you have the resources here in South Carolina to meet this moment, to provide that health care, to slow the spread, and also to continue to open up South Carolina and open up South Carolina schools. It's the best for our kids, it's the best for working families, and it's the best for South Carolina and America. But that being said, we're here to listen about how we can best assist you beyond the resources. I'm pleased to report to you in the days ahead, in addition to CDC guidance that has been issued literally since March, we're preparing additional new resources that will give guidance to schools at every level about how to safely reopen schools, and that guidance will be coming out in the days ahead. Finally, I would just take the opportunity to say that we all have a role to play to safely reopen our schools. We just want to continue to encourage the people of South Carolina, as you see this state going back to work, and as you aspire to see us going back to school, K through 12, or on great campuses like this of higher education. Let's all do our part. We encourage everyone to continue to practice good hygiene, wash your hands, wear a mask wherever the state and local authorities indicate that it's necessary or recommended, and wear a mask whenever social distancing is not possible. You know, I like to say it's always a good idea to wear a mask these days, and it's one way each of us can do our part to protect the most vulnerable, to reopen our economy, to reopen our schools. And so we want to thank the people of South Carolina for the great efforts that you have made in every respect in the midst of this pandemic. And just assure you, Governor, and the people of this great state that President Trump, myself, our entire administration is going to stay with you until we reach that day that we put the coronavirus in the past. But I thank you for the opportunity to have this conversation and to listen in to all these great educators. And let me take this opportunity to introduce everyone to my favorite educator. She happens to be the Second Lady of the United States, has been my wife for 35 years, but she is a classroom school teacher, and she has a heart for kids. And I wanted to recognize her for some opening remarks. Karen?
Thank you. You know, as a teacher myself, I want to just take a moment to thank all of the teachers because we all quickly learned how to do online teaching. And it wasn't something that our teachers across America were familiar with. And so I applaud the teachers who stepped up right away. I know at our school it was a lot of, you know, me emailing the IT specialist saying, okay, now wait a minute, how do I put these art projects in a folder on this new platform? And I know the teachers worked really, really hard. But the parents are really the unsung heroes. And I know we have some parents in the room today because they really had to get up to speed, and many of them were trying to telework from home as well and trying to juggle the time on the computer. Okay, I have a Zoom meeting, you have a Zoom class, hang on, let's figure this out. It added a lot of stress to our families, so thank you to all the parents. But it's our kids who are struggling, and they need their friends, and they need their teachers. And I've got to tell you, I love seeing the kids over here in the audience today. It makes me eager to get back in the classroom. but they need their routines. And the routines won't be exactly the same. I mean, I'm an art teacher, and I don't get to teach in my art room this year. I go with a cart from room to room because it's going to keep the kids safer. They have their own supplies. I don't set out supplies this year. So there are ways that we can make it safe for our kids. But they need their routines, whatever the new routines are. So the decision to open up schools greatly impacts our children. It impacts them academically, which we're seeing. It impacts them socially, and it impacts them emotionally. And so our kids, for their mental health and for their academic health, need to be back in school. So thank you for letting me be here today.
Great. Thank you, Karen. And with that, Governor, with your permission, I thought we'd recognize the Secretary of Education for some opening remarks, and then we'll hear from all these great leaders around the table.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. Thank you, Mrs. Pence. Those remarks from a teacher's perspective are so true and so heartwarming, and you put it into such a great focus. Governor McMaster and Mrs. McMaster, thank you for hosting us here today. And Governor, I just want to begin by applauding you and you and your team here in South Carolina. You've taken bold steps to put students first throughout this pandemic, and I know that's going to continue this fall and beyond. And I wanted to note the big announcement yesterday on the SAFE grants for the most disadvantaged students, and just applaud you for your leadership in that area. So every student in South Carolina and across America must continue learning. It's not a matter of if schools should reopen, it's a matter of how to do it safely. How schools reopen is best left to local leaders. They know their students, their teachers, and the health situation in their area better than folks in Washington do. The Secretary of Education isn't the nation's superintendent, nor does she direct local education decisions, nor should she. Education is perhaps the most local issue there is. But that doesn't mean communities are on their own. We'll continue, as we have done since the beginning of this outbreak, to share best practices, extend needed flexibility and freedom to reopen safely, and to ensure learning continues. We've also secured significant resources for schools to support those efforts, as the Vice President has already noted, and are continuing discussions about further resources. Our schools can do what it takes to keep everyone safe from the virus. Socially distance, practice good hygiene, ramp up cleaning, use face coverings when necessary and appropriate, adapt new routines and practices in the school building that limit unneeded risk, like learning and eating outside. I'm sure, as the Vice President has noted too, you are all aware of the American Academy of Pediatrics call for learning to continue this fall. Many other health professionals have joined in that chorus. They know this is a matter of health versus health. Students rely on teachers and peers for their social and emotional development. These are formative years. 100% online learning simply doesn't cut it for younger students. They rely on access to mental health services, counseling, special education, and other supportive services provided by their school. School leaders have to weigh the health of the whole child as they make reopening decisions. When we say fully operational, that means students having access to a full school year of learning or more, and that parents and students have real choices and options to make that happen. It's expected to look different for each community, and that's okay. But everyone should start with the goal of fully reopening for in-person classes this fall. And if the situation requires it, or if your family requires it, providing a robust and fully functional remote and distance learning plan for students and teachers who need it. It's about education rising to meet the needs of each and every student, not students having to conform to a one-size-fits-all system. American higher education knows how to get that done, as you're doing here at USC. From day one of this pandemic, we gave colleges and universities regulatory flexibility so learning could go online right away, and it did. And I think this played a big role in slowing the spread. And keep in mind, college students are at different points in their lifelong learning journeys than our K-12 students. These young adults already learned the social emotional skills to cope with and choose 100% online learning if that makes sense for them. I've long talked about the need for everyone to rethink education and to expand education options for all students. It's a passion the President and the Vice President share. This moment demands it. Students are demanding it, families are demanding it, and teachers are demanding it. I hear from them every day. We're working with Congress right now to ensure that students, especially those most disadvantaged, have the options and the resources that they need to keep learning this fall at the pace and in the ways that make the most sense for them. I hope everyone will seize the opportunities today to work together to innovate and think very creatively on behalf of all students. Thanks for what each of you are doing to support students, and I'm looking forward to our discussion.
Excellent.
I'd now like to ask Administrator Verma to make some remarks.
Thank you, Secretary. I'm going to talk a little bit about nursing homes. Before I do that, we've been discussing schools and the importance of opening schools, and we've heard about the impact on mental health and a lot of the services that they get in schools. But also just wanted to point out through the Medicaid program, we provide a lot of school-based healthcare services, whether it's vision, hearing screenings, immunizations, and that's such a critical part of a child's health, especially for our low-income children. They really do depend on the schools providing those healthcare services, so really appreciate the strong efforts by the governor to open schools, because I think that's going to have a significant impact. And we know that there are a lot of kids that are not getting their needed healthcare services as well. Again, just wanted to thank the governor for his strong leadership on focusing on vulnerable citizens, and especially those in the nursing homes. The president has made that a focus from day one, and we've had efforts from the very beginning supporting our nursing homes. Just recently, we announced that we're providing point-of-care tests inside nursing homes, and this is really important for nursing homes to be able to test the healthcare workers that are coming in every day. Unfortunately, some of them may be positive and they don't know that, and that actually could increase the spread inside the nursing home. So it helps keep the patients safe or the residents safe. And that also has a downstream impact on hospitals, because we know these patients, if they get sick, they could end up in the hospital. So it also reduces that impact on hospitals. And by providing these point-of-care tests in the nursing home, it actually reduces the impact on testing capacity and actually increases the testing capacity across the state. And finally, I think it's just important for our nursing home residents. This will be the pathway to reunite them with their families. And also just for the state to let you all know, we're here to support your efforts with nursing homes and in anything else. We're providing on-the-ground, in-person support to those nursing homes if they need help, if they have a case in their home. So thank you very much for hosting us today.
Great, thank you. Governor?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Vice President. On behalf of happy, proud, industrious South Carolinians from the mountains to the oceans, we want to thank you and the President Trump, for your great leadership and the support that you've given us and the people of South Carolina. The whole team, including those here today, have been an enormous help to us. We have several that are prepared to make some remarks, and I'd like to first call on President Bob Caslin, who's the president of the University of South Carolina. The University of South Carolina was one of the first state institutions to announce plans to reopen this fall to in-person instruction. So fresh from 5 years at West Point, we're glad to have the president with us here.
You
President
came and
Caslin.
visited when we were up at West Point, so you remember. It was right after the inauguration. You came to one of the diversity and gave one of our talks there in the middle of a snowstorm, if you remember.
I remember it well. It's good to see you again.
Yes, sir. Great to see you. So, Mr. Governor, thank you very much for hosting this, Mr. Vice President. We are really honored for you and your team to be with us this afternoon, and it's a privilege for us and the great faculty and students that we have here on campus and our staff to have you and to host you and your team here. Mrs. Pence, thank you very much for coming, for your comments. It really means an awful lot. And Peggy, I just want to give a shout out for you too, thank you for being here in this group, because your presence means an awful lot to all of us for higher education. Thank you. So.
I want to see Shelley.
She should be here. I know. I'm going to tell her. Secretary DeVos, ma'am, thank you very much for your leadership. Thanks for coming too, and we're honored to host you as well. It's really a great privilege for all of us. I do want to put a plug in and say thanks so much for what you did for the CARES Act, and it really has made a difference for us and for our students. And let me put a plug in for the version 4 of the next CARES Act, because that is going to be so tremendously important. So thank you, sir, for your leadership and the President's leadership in Congress for going out of their way to make that happen. It really has a huge impact on us. I was asked to take a couple of minutes to talk about our plan to reopen, and I'd like to discuss that. Our plan is really surrounded on a set of principles that have guided us through everything that we have done. And first and foremost, our principle number 1 is the safety and health of our students, our faculty, and our staff. And second is because we're an urban campus in the middle of a very robust urban community, we want to make sure that any outbreak whatsoever is contained within our campus community and not spread into the surrounding campus. So we're very sensitive to that, to some of the vulnerable groups that would be out there as well. In looking at our planning purpose, we created a planning group. We call it the Futures Planning Group. We really have some incredible talent here at the university. At the Arnold School of Public Health, we have some of the nation's best epidemiologists. They've been on national TV. They're fantastic. But they're very helpful because they not only take the situational issues, but they apply those situational issues of what we can expect here on campus. So it's the predictive analysis that becomes so important to us, and they're able to get it to us, rather than just relying on what are some of the theories that are out there. It's actually predictive and helpful. We also have a pharmacy college, which is at the cutting edge of saliva testing, with a laboratory that can get the laboratory results not in days, but in hours. And that's so tremendously important because as we understand this student body as they return, they are 1.5 to 5% asymptomatic positive, which means that they're positive carrying the virus, they're spreading it, and they don't even know it. And those are the ones that are so important that we identify up front right away. And this type of saliva test mechanism, we get the results back in hours, allows us to be able to do that so we can identify them and work with them right away. And the plan also is something that it's not top-down. We are involving all of our constituents, especially our faculty that are so talented so that they can participate in this. We want to be transparent. We want to be open because in the midst of a crisis, open, honest, transparent communication really builds the trust I think that's necessary. And that was one of our fundamental principles. Our plan has 3 phases. The first phase is really going on right now, and that is a transitional phased increase of students on campus. We actually have students on campus now, a number of students that are in housing off of campus, and we're working with them and understanding some of our risk mitigating factors that we put in place and to pilot them to make sure that they're working. And to really, the purpose of that is we want to build confidence that our students and faculty, when they do return, that they have confidence the risk mitigating factors are in place. The second phase is tremendously important, and we do recognize that there is anxiety and there's nervousness about coming back. There's nervousness with students and their parents. There's nervousness with the faculty. So we have made the return to residence not mandatory but optional. Optional for students and optional for faculty. Now that really creates a challenge for how we're going to deliver education, not only in residence but in online, and some of the different unintended consequences of doing all of that as well. But we think it's tremendously important that we have that option in there. And we believe as we continue to build confidence, more and more will return. But we think that's tremendously important. We didn't want to force anybody to, especially in this particular environment, to do something that they would feel unsafe or unhealthy in. And that was important. The third is that we wanted to maintain the intellectual agility and the flexibility so that if we did have a situation that had unacceptable risk, that we can be able to disperse similar that we did in the spring semester. So we see this as an issue of balancing cost and risk. The risk obviously is a virus that has not yet been contained. But it's also, we don't have the herd immunity yet, and we don't have the vaccine, and we're hoping that vaccine is going to come as quickly as possible. The news yesterday we heard is very encouraging. But knowing that we still have a virus, that being the risk, the cost is not necessarily the financial cost, but the one thing that I'm very concerned about is that we're going into this semester with a planning assumption that we're losing 10% of our students not coming back. And as I read in some articles, 15 to 20, as many as 15 to 20% in some universities are not coming back. And it's not necessarily an issue of lost tuition or lost revenue. It's an issue of the decreasing value proposition of higher education, because their spring semester was so disrupted that they're electing not to return back if they're going to be going online again, strictly online again. And if their value proposition of higher education is diminishing in their view and in their perspective, and they see alternate career paths, not that they're wrong, but it's just a significant element of our future corporate leaders, our future leaders within our community, our future scientists, our future doctors that are now looking at other paths other than higher education. And I think that's one of the really cost factors that we're really taking into consideration. So as we look at risk, we look at acceptable risk that we can mitigate and unacceptable risk. So we look at the risk mitigating factors that we put in place are a number of the ones that you and your commission had suggested to us. First and foremost, it's social distancing and the face masks. So we put a face mask policy inside buildings, inside classroom as mandatory. Also, risk mitigation factor number 2 is testing. And we think the testing is so important, and we are asking every single student to be responsible to get tested right before they return or on return. And the saliva testing, and this is what's important, it doesn't help us to get test results back in 8 days or 10 days. Because if there's somebody who's asymptomatic positive and they don't know that they're positive, that's 8 days of them running around spreading a virus. We need the test results back within hours, and that's why I think that the program that we're trying to put in place, and there's a number of other universities, I think that's one way that we could address that. Our biggest concern as we look at student behavior, and as we're watching student behavior throughout the summer, it's not necessarily student behavior in the classroom, because I'm very confident that we have the social distancing and risk mitigating measures in place. It's a social activity off of campus that I think really needs to be addressed. It's in the bars, in the restaurants, it's in the off-campus parties that they have, and this is just normal student behavior. But when they get into that close environment, that's when you create the greatest risk. And that's where we're finding students who are positive, and we ask them where they thought that they contracted it. Those are the situations that we think we address that. So the way we're addressing this is that we're putting together a campaign called I Pledge Columbia. This is a peer-to-peer campaign. It's run by our student body president, Ishi Rustin. She's phenomenal. And she's putting out advertisements. The advertisements are going out right now on social media to all the students so that they understand what it means to be a responsible student within this community. And but I Pledge Columbia is that I'm going to be a responsible student. I'm going to wear my face mask. I understand what social distancing is all about. I understand what social behavior off campus is going to be, and I'm going to be responsible. You can count on me to do that. And I think that's going to make a huge difference. We're also working this, not individually, but collaboratively with the mayor, asking the mayor to keep the face mask ordinance that he put in place, curfews and other type of things that we're working with them on. But I think our partnership with the community and our partnership with the mayor becomes tremendously important. So in summary, we believe we have a plan that first and foremost looks at the safety and health of our students and our faculty and our staff. And that second, it's a plan that is not just out of a whim, it's informed by science, and it has to be informed by science as we drive forward. We want to be collaborative, we want to be comprehensive in this particular plan. We understand how important it is to balance risk and cost, and we also understand that if we're going to have acceptable risk, we've got to have the right risk mitigating factors in place, measure them as we proceed, and make sure that we're on track. But that's our plan, and that's where I think we're very confident in this, and we're getting great. I think the staff reports and even our scientists, our epidemiologists are as cautious as they are. You know, that we couldn't get to this particular point without their great support and their great predictive analysis to get where we are right now. So I'll stop right there, sir, and
That's great.
Defer to the next person and look forward to your questions.
Thanks for your leadership, President Castle. Well done.
Yes, sir.
Really. Well done.
All right, thank you. Tom Wilson is the superintendent of Anderson School District Number 5. This district has led the state in e-learning for the past several years. His district has mentored other districts in the state on how to implement effective e-learning. This fall, the district will offer parents the choice of remote learning or in-person instruction for 5 days a week. Superintendent Tom Wilson.
Thank you, Governor, Mrs. McMaster, and Vice President Pence, Mrs. Pence, Secretary DeVos. It's great to have you in the great state of South Carolina, and it's a pleasure to be with you today. Last Tuesday night, we had a board meeting, and we rolled out our Restart A5 program, Anderson School District 5, and the next morning, the governor had a press conference, and Governor, I was so excited when, I don't know if you copied our notes, but your rollout plan was exactly like ours, and we were excited for that. Our plan really has 3 components. We've moved our starting date back to September 8th. We've been working on that for several months, hopefully that things would settle down after Labor Day. Our parents will have a choice between face-to-face. We will require masks in 6th through 12th grade. All adults will be required to wear masks. Like most districts, we're going to limit visitors, limit activities in the school during the day. Our elementary students will not be required to wear masks. Of course, they're encouraged to, but those of you that ever taught elementary school, if you're teaching kindergarten to 1st grade, all they're going to do all day is straighten mask on the little ones. And so we know that's going to be a headache for elementary teachers. We're following the standard protocol for cleaning and that other districts are doing on school buses, classrooms, cafeteria, washing stations, et cetera, and I won't go into all that. We will social distance as much as reasonably possible. We want that message to our parents. The other option parents can do is we're developing a virtual academy, which they can sign up for. We actually extended our sign-up date to through the end of July to give parents more time to really understand what the virtual academy is. There's a lot of confusion out there between e-learning, virtual academy, remote learning, distance learning. They are similar, but they're very different also. Our virtual academy in elementary school, we will use the Calvert Learning Academy, which is a very structured, academic-focused program. In 6 through 12, we will use Ed Minimum. We will have our virtual academy teachers will actually come to a school. They will actually work from school. It won't be any working from home. They'll come to the school just like other teachers do. In case of widespread and we have to close, we will go back to our e-learning program, which the governor mentioned that we e-learned last year from March the 16th through the end of school year. We were very fortunate in District 5, as the governor mentioned. We were the first district in the state to have e-learning. Thank to our local delegation that we were able to get a proviso passed. The EOC and Melanie Barden, who's now in the governor's office, was director of the EOC. We were approved as the first pilot. We have spent millions and millions of dollars in personnel, technology, support staff, fix-it people, district integration specialists to make sure that that program is effective. E-learning was never designed for 3 months of instruction. E-learning was originally rolled out when we have snow, and those of you from Indiana may say, well, why do you close school for snow? But if we get 1 flake, we close school in South Carolina, and we could e-learn and not have to make that up at the end of the year. So, but it was never designed for 3 months. But we did the best we could, and we did a lot better than a lot of people really expected. So if we have widespread, we'll go to district-wide e-learning. The virtual academy will continue separately. At the semester break in January, students that are in the virtual academy, they may decide, I want to go back to face-to-face. Hopefully, things will be a lot calmer, the parents will feel better about that, and they can go back to face-to-face. The students in the virtual academy, they're our students. They can participate in sports, they can participate in programs at school, they can go to our technology career center, You know, they're students. They're not isolated in a different school district or whatever. What am I afraid of through all this? What keeps me up is worrying about our struggling readers. Those kids that left school last March, first grade, kindergarten, second grade, third grade, fourth grade, that are struggling readers. There are a lot of folks in this room, and I'm sure there's educators in here, but I dare say there's only a handful of people in this room know how to teach a child to read. I've been in this business 44 years. I wouldn't know where to start because I was not an elementary teacher. I was not an elementary principal. I hire people that can do that. So what is happening for those struggling readers, and most of them, unfortunately, are from low income. Most of them are from minority, and they've been at home, as the governor said, a lot of their parents cannot work from home.
Right.
It's impossible.
That's right.
If you're building refrigerators at Electrolux, or you're making tires at Michelin, or you're making paper at First Quality in Anderson County, you've got to be on the job.
Right.
And those children are left at home, and then mom comes home or dad, and they've got to teach a child how to read. Most adults cannot remember when we could not read. Most adults really cannot remember learning how to read because it was ingrained in us so early, and we take it for granted. But I'm here to say today that if we don't get those kids back in school and teach them, particularly those that can't read, the hurt's going to last for a generation. In 6, 7, 8, 9 years from now, we're going to see a dropout rate like we've never seen. Kids don't drop out of school because they hate school. They drop out of school because they find it irrelevant, they find it, they can't relate to it, and they're not successful. They love school because that's where other kids are. Right. But when they get to that point, they cannot, and they feel embarrassed. I'm going to quit. I'm going to go. And in 8, 9 years, we're going to have a generation of kids that are going to quit. And what it's going to do to everybody in this room, and everybody in this state, and everybody in this country, we're going to continue to put more people riding the train than pulling the train, and we're going to have a huge debt to pay for that. So, Governor, I commend you. I've gotten some criticism from colleagues. Can't believe you're doing this. I said, look, I don't play the politics of the pandemic. I'm about taking care of kids, getting them ready to be successful when they leave Anderson School District 5. So in closing, we look forward to getting back. The biggest question I have is when are we going to play football? And we're looking forward to getting things back to normal, or as they like to say, the new normal. But in Anderson 5, we say we're going to have a better normal. So again, it's been a privilege to be with you today. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom Wilson. I'd like to call on Dr. Akil Ross. Dr. Akil Ross is the 2018 National Principal of the Year by the National Association of Secondary School Principals.
Congratulations.
And is an education consultant focused on community engagement to empower better student outcomes. A parent as well, Dr. Ross has also served on Accelerate SC, which we mentioned earlier, which is our state's task force to reopen the economy, and has been very successful. Dr. Ross.
Thank you, Governor, and to our state's First Lady, Peggy. Thank you so much for being here. We certainly appreciate that. It means a lot to us. To Karen Pence, second First Lady, thank you for that story about what you feel as a teacher. We know your role in government, but to hear your voice as a teacher means a lot to us. And to Mr. Vice President, thank you for making this conversation very important to you. So thank you. There's a lot of discussion about opening schools. I would like to focus on sustaining a successful opening. My experience has taught me that sustaining a successful school opening has 3 requirements. 1, people. 2, supplies. And as President Casson said, number 3, confidence. The latter was the top consideration of Governor McMaster's Accelerate SC Task Force. We focused on building confidence to reopen South Carolina. Now, it is assumed that having the first two resources on the list that you automatically get the third, and this is not true. To gain confidence, each teacher and staff member must believe they are ready to have the skills to care for the children and the families they serve. They must be able to execute those plans that have been created over the summer. A recent poll conducted by the National Association of Secondary School Principals found that only a third of school principals are confident kids and staff can stay well when school reopens. The good news is teachers and coaches know how to build confidence. We learn a lot from them. For example, when the swim coach starts a child, they start a child in the shallow end of the pool. And as the child's skills improve, they move to the next level. Before we know it, the child is swimming at the deep end. Each child learns at different rates, but they all progress with confidence. Likewise, no two schools are the same. Schools are microcosms of the diverse communities they serve, and these communities face varied challenges. The educational, financial, the health disparities among race, class, geography, just to name a few. These factors and community spread can be a challenge to some schools in parts of our state. Reopening is hard, but nobody wants to reopen. I recommend that each school be encouraged to reopen at their point of confidence. Some will start virtually, some move to hybrid, some to face-to-face. Today's data tells us our virus-related decisions from 2 weeks ago, and if those decisions were correct. As a result, schools should move from their point of confidence, and every 2 weeks, as their confidence grows, they will progress through this spectrum. A successful school opening is best judged from the viewpoint of the child. Each child deserves a teacher and school ready to enrich their mind, their body, and their spirit. Thank you so much for your time, and I look forward to engaging in this conversation.
Thank you, Dr. Roth.
Outstanding. Thank you. Great points.
And I would like to call on Janie Neely. Janie Neely, Ms. Neely is the parent of 2 children who attend public schools. Her youngest child is with special needs. Her son Tucker is a rising 10th grade student and is seated with her. Janie is a former public school classroom teacher and now writes English language arts content. Please, ma'am. Ms. Neely.
Vice President Pence, Secretary DeVos, Government Master, thank you for this opportunity and for hosting this important discussion on school opening. I am the parent of 3 children that have very diverse learning needs, and school closings have greatly impacted each of them. However, my focus today is on my youngest son, Marsh, who is 4 years old and diagnosed with Down syndrome. Out of my 3 children, his life has changed most dramatically. In March, our schools closed abruptly without the infrastructure or a plan to transition to distance learning. While this was difficult for everyone, it was especially hard on students like my son. My son's 4. For primary age students, school develops skills in regulating behavior, emotions, attention, and the structure and routine of a school day that builds these foundational skills just cannot be replicated in a distance learning platform. For my son, e-learning cannot provide him the peer-to-peer interactions and the language models that he so desperately needs to develop and to build his speech skills. When school closed, my son lost a lot of his learning supports. Suddenly, he was without his friends, his teacher, and much-needed therapist. It was like falling off an early intervention cliff. Before school closings, I was already fighting an uphill battle to have my son fully included with his peers. Now, I'm really not sure how I'll ever bridge the gap. As much as my husband and I work with Marsh at home, nothing compares to face-to-face learning in a school environment with a teacher and his peers. Please understand, I'm not dismissing the seriousness of this virus. However, the cost of remaining in isolation will have long-term consequences for students like my son. Children need early intervention to develop and maintain their skills. School is essential. As adults, it's our responsibility to find safe ways to resume an interactive learning environment for these children. This is a golden opportunity for us to revisit school practices, look closely at students' diverse needs, and find creative solutions. Choice must be at the center of this conversation. There isn't a one-size-fits-all solution, but honestly, in education, that should never be our goal. Each family has to make a decision in the best interest of their child's academic, social, mental, and physical health. School districts must offer choices. There cannot be a take-it-or-leave-it approach to reopening schools in the fall. This also doesn't have to be a binary choice of two undesirable options. One thing that I've learned as a parent of a child with a disability is if you only focus on the barriers, you will only see mountains. We must change our view. Let's look for potential and possibilities in our new learning circumstances. Modeling for students how we overcome adversity is the best lesson we can teach at this moment in time. Showing how we can bridge our differences to help one another is life-changing. I truly believe that we are at a fork in the road of education. Our well-worn path is out of service. So together, we need to forge a new road for our students. They're depending on us to problem solve and innovate for their future. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Janie. Well, just 1 minute, Katie. You can. Janie, thank you for those very eloquent words. I hope you will give Marsh a hug for us.
He's not great at social distancing.
That's right. I'll bet he's not. And Tucker, thanks for coming here. I know how proud you are of your mom today and your family. I hope, I really hope some of the members of the media here heard you loud and clear, because I think that putting daylight on special needs children and the vital role that schools play in families like yours is a great, great service. I just want to thank you again for those beautiful words and, frankly, the example of your family and your own career. Let me also say the insights that we just received. Dr. Caslin, thank you for such a well-structured, well-ordered, safety-first approach that takes in the needs of the community as a whole and puts in high relief the need to be building confidence and participation. I love the I Pledge Columbia program, and we'll be carrying that back as a best practice. CDC will be issuing, the task force is reviewing tomorrow, some additional resources for parents and for schools, and we'll be bringing back a lot of your framework into that conversation. I also want to thank Superintendent Wilson for your very moving comments about students that are struggling readers and the long-term consequences of those children missing that point in development for them personally, for their families, for their future. Just very, very powerful. And it's something that I'm going to carry back. All these comments are very, very insightful and eloquent, Governor, but we'll be carrying back. I know, being married to an elementary school teacher, there are moments in development where if they pass, that it's very, very hard for children to be able to go back and reset. And so I want to thank you for focusing on that particular aspect, but also I want to commend you on Restart A5 and the fact that the next day the governor announced the same date and much of the same framework is a great tribute to his leadership and to yours. And thank you for leaning in. And lastly, Dr. Ross, thank you for your very eloquent words. I was very moved when you said every child deserves a teacher, a classroom, and I think every American family believes that. Every American believes that. And your focus, it's interesting to me that you, Dr. Castleton, began with saying building confidence, and then you said that in your school system, to take every 2 weeks and to look at the progress that you're making to build that confidence, I think is extremely insightful, and no real surprise that you received the national recognition that you received. This is an all-star group, Governor, and I just like to, I want to thank all the parents and family members and other educators who are here with us today. This has been enormously helpful, and I hope you join me in thanking all of those who spoke and all of those that have participated here. This has been very, very valuable. We'll carry this back, and we're going to be with you every step of the way as you put these very, very sound plans to reopen schools and to get those kids into that much-deserved classroom in front of those teachers one more time again. Join me in thanking all these folks.
Mr. Vice President, on behalf of all of South Carolina, we appreciate you being here. We did not hear from Dr. Neil Vincent of Florence and Ms. Angela Thomas, a teacher, but we appreciate your participation and your help. And also Tim Hardy, we thank you for being here as well. Great words, great thoughts, a lot of experience, much initiative and imagination, and it's working here in South Carolina. And your presence here is very important to us. It's encouraging, it's inspiring. Ms. Pence, we hope you'll come with him every time. And please tell the President we're proud of him and we appreciate what he and his administration and you are doing to help educate the children of America and of South Carolina. So Peg and I and all the rest, we thank you deeply and look forward to the next time.
Thank you, Governor.
Thanks,
and to our other participants, I would really welcome a letter or an email. We'll make sure that you get a way to reach in. We'll put that in the book. We'll review it personally. We appreciate your leadership as well. But I hope I can tell by the countenance and the smiles around the table how much everyone here appreciates you, Governor McMaster. And so join me in thanking Governor McMaster and the First Lady for bringing us all together. Thank you, Governor. God bless you all.